Beginnings of these things are always super awkward. Always have been, always will be. Doesn't matter how long that you stay away or how often you do them. The getting started is always the awkward part. Hi guys, long time no see. It's me, I'm back. I can't actually believe how much time has gone by, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Hello, if you are new to my channel, my name is Katie. This is Inside number 23, what was pretty much a weekly podcast that I've been doing for several years, but has been on a hiatus for almost a year. It was almost a year ago that I posted my last video on this channel, and I can't really understand if there'll be any of you left because it's been such a long time and I've missed you. And hello and welcome back if you're a long time viewer, and if this is your first video, this is going to be a little bit of a strange one because this is not going to be regular format whatsoever. I just realised how long it's been since there was a video here, and I wanted to have a little chat to update anyone who doesn't know kind of what's been going on in my life and what to expect from this channel going forward. This is not going to be a regular podcast, as I said. There's no creative content in this little video whatsoever. I'm not going to be sharing what I've been working on knitting wise and sewing wise. Usually that is everything that I've been doing here, is sharing all of my newest creative projects. This is just going to be a little chat to get you up to date with everything that's been going on. I am going to preface this with, because this is a super chatty video, I appreciate that not everybody's going to want to hear everything, so I will be very careful to timestamp everything down below. So if there's a particular section that you want to skip to or something that you want to skip out, then feel free. It's been a while. A lot has gone on inside number 23. A lot has gone on. My life feels like it is in a completely different place from where it was just shy of a year ago. There have been some monumental changes. The biggest of which is obviously I got new glasses. Do you like them? No, I mean, I am very much enjoying my new glasses, but that is not the biggest change that has happened in our lives. We became parents about a year ago, and it has been amazing. I cannot believe we are nearly parents of a 1-year-old. It seemed to have absolutely flown by, and also it feels like eons between this time last year and now. That is basically the reason why I stopped posting on this channel, because I've been very, very much involved with birthing a baby, raising a baby, and everything that goes along with that. Parenting is challenging, definitely. It's not easy, but it is amazing, and it's by far the best thing that I've ever done. So big thumbs up for parenthood. To start off with, I am going to talk a little bit about our birth experience, about everything that happened. This is going to involve a little bit of medical chat around birthing of babies and such, so if you would prefer to not hear any of that, and please look after yourself, I do appreciate that that's not for everyone, then skip to the time just down below. Before I start talking about the birth, one thing that I do want to make very, very clear, this is my experience of birth. No one else's. So if I sound like I'm making generalised statements, those are generalised statements that are just pertaining to me and my own experience. Everybody is different when it comes to childbirth. Also, I was absolutely fine after this experience, and our daughter Posy was absolutely fine during this experience. So I don't want you to worry about me, don't worry about Posy. It was a complicated situation, but we were absolutely fine. So please bear that in mind if things get a little bit intense. But yeah, that's just what I wanted to say up front. When I was last speaking to you, I was quite a lot larger than I am now. I was very heavily pregnant, almost 9 months pregnant, in October of last year, and things got a little bit complicated right at the end of my pregnancy. Our pregnancy experience had a couple of ups and downs, but in general I was considered very low risk, and there hadn't really been any complications whatsoever regarding our little baby whilst she was in utero. However, during my 3rd trimester I started to experience quite severe itching all over my body. Itching is a tricky thing with pregnancy because a lot of women get itchy in pregnancy and there's no kind of underlying reason for it. However, itching can be a symptom of a very particular condition called, and I've written it down just so that I pronounce it properly, intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy. I called up our hospital in the very early hours of one morning because I'd had a terrible night when I'd been itching all over. I was very, very uncomfortable, and something that midwives do say to you quite a lot is that if you do experience itching, that you should go and get checked. So I called up our hospital, who recommended that I come in for blood tests. They test for liver functionality and they test for bile acid level. ICP, this particular condition which they are looking for that's linked to itching, is all to do with liver functionality. I am going to talk about this in very, very basic terms. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about ICP, I'm going to put some links down below for more specific information. In very basic terms, ICP means that your liver is essentially becoming quite sluggish, which means that your bile acids start to build up in your bloodstream because your liver is essentially not moving these bile acids in the way that it should do. This is something that isn't actually very problematic for a pregnant person. It doesn't affect you really at all, but it can be quite nasty for your unborn baby. There is a larger percentage of stillborn babies from people who suffer with ICP, so it's better to know as soon as possible if you're diagnosed with it, basically. So the first time I went in for these blood tests, everything came back normal. Went home with a lot of super cooling cream, which I rubbed all over myself. But the thing that they recommend that you do is come back a week later for follow-up tests. So a week later, I was coming up to my due date. I was a few days before my due date, and I went in for these blood tests in the morning. Emrys came with me and monitored the baby. Everything was fine. Had these blood tests done, and they said that they would give me a call back with the results later. And that day, I was just convinced that everything was fine, it was good, the itching was still there, but it wasn't even as bad as it had been before. I got a phone call in the early afternoon from one of the lovely midwives who said, your liver functionality is perfect, but your bile acid level has gone up really quite high, and we need you to come to the hospital because we're going to need to induce your baby. And that was a little bit difficult to hear because we had very much been gearing towards natural birth, no pain relief, breathing exercises, water birth, all of these things. And I didn't know anything about induction. It was a matter of urgency that we kind of get to the hospital as quickly as we could to get this all started. So called my mum, called Emrys, everyone came home, we headed over to the hospital, and the next morning, actually, they started the induction process. The reason that they started my induction the morning after we came in that evening is that for the last few days I had started having Braxton Hicks contractions. My body was kind of gearing itself up for birth. It was getting where it needed to go naturally. And I'd had a couple of instances where I thought, is this the day? Is this the day? As you do as a first-time mum who's never gone through labour, any little twinge, you think, oh, this is the thing, this is the labour, it's starting. But the difference between Braxton Hicks contractions and regular contractions is Braxton Hicks contractions stop and regular ones do not. When I went in to start the induction process, they could see that my body was starting to have contractions. And they held off on the induction overnight to see whether my body would progress where it needed to go naturally, because obviously it's preferable for your body to just do what it wants to do rather than try and force it into something through chemical means. It was quite difficult in the end when the induction started because I developed something really fun, which is called hyperstimulation of the uterus. Essentially, my body was producing the kind of chemicals that it needed to go into labour, and then the induction medicine that I had been given was putting all of these fake chemicals into my body to also induce labour. And my body went into overdrive, and for the entire process pretty much I had constant contractions. Things were not progressing very fast, which is also something that tends to happen with first-time mums. Your body doesn't really know what it's doing. And it was like that moment in Friends when Rachel is in labour and all these women keep getting wheeled into the ward and then wheeled out again and taken to the labour ward. And I was just sitting there in a lot of pain. To cut a long story short, after about 3 days of having endless contractions, by this point I saw it as giving up and accepted pain relief at that time, but now I look back as, yeah, doing the thing that I needed to do to get through having a child. I'd had some pain relief, they'd given me liquid morphine. By the time I got my second dose of liquid morphine, it wasn't working at all. And they promised me that I could have a morphine injection if things hadn't progressed any further. At this point, I think I was maybe 3 centimetres dilated, which is not at a point where you can be having a baby. They promised me a morphine injection if I was kind of not far along enough for things to progress, so that at least I could sleep. And I was thinking, thank God, they're going to give me some proper pain relief and it's going to work and I'm going to be able to sleep and it's going to be brilliant. At that point, my waters broke. One thing that happens after your waters go is everything feels even more intense, and the discomfort that I had been in for the last several days kind of was amped up to another level. Combine that with no sleep and being in a strange place, going through a process that I never thought that I would have to go through. I wasn't in the best place. At this point, one of the incredible midwives who were looking after us, we had a lot of midwives looking after us because we were there for a long time, so a lot of shifts went by, examined the baby, and actually she was wrong, but she thought that Posy was in distress. She thought that she couldn't find Posy's heartbeat at this point. That wasn't correct. Posy was absolutely fine. Posy was fine through this whole process. She was chillaxing. So 1 minute I was on a bed kind of yelling about how much pain I was in. The next minute all these alarms went off. This whole team of people come rushing in. They unclip my bed, the wheels of my bed, and they're wheeling us down this corridor to a lift, and we're being taken to labour, and I'm sitting there on this bed going, what on earth is going on? They were going to give me a morphine injection. Take me back to the people who were going to give me my morphine. Essentially, we got wheeled down into labour ward. I was a little bit delirious at this point. I was so tired. I was in so much distress. And I didn't know where I was. At this point, up until this point, my mum wasn't allowed in with me because I was only allowed one person with me in kind of the pre-labour ward. But finally, my mum was allowed to be in there with me and with Emrys. And I remember both of them just being completely shocked because they didn't know what was going on either. I was obviously in a lot of pain. They'd seen me in a lot of pain over the last few days. And then, you know, we're being... the hospital kind of version of being blue lighted into labour ward. They're hooking me up to all of these machines and they're looking at what's going on with baby, and they found her heartbeat straight away, and it was like, thank goodness. And this was the magical moment when I finally got some pain relief that actually did something, and they put me on gas and air, which made me hallucinate a little bit. I said all kinds of weird and wonderful things on the gas and air, and I think, thank goodness, because both Emrys and my mum went from being absolutely petrified that something was terribly wrong to having me spouting all kinds of rubbish and it being one of the funniest things ever. So I thank the gas and air for that light relief in my labour, for the people who were with me, and also the bliss of finally having some respite. But it didn't take very long before that didn't really work anymore. And between each contraction, which were very long, when I had a little gap, I'd take the gas and air out of my mouth and just shout epidural, epidural, epidural. Coming from the person who didn't want any kind of pain relief in their birth experience. An absolutely marvellous individual came in and gave me the most beautiful epidural that a person has ever experienced. I do not know how they got the epidural into my back because I was flailing like a wild person during contractions. Every single muscle in my body kind of tensed up. But the minute that epidural went in, just saying, everyone should have one in their life. It was a beautiful thing. I was very fortunate that it worked for me straight away, and it gave me the relief that I hadn't had in, by this point, nearly 4 days. So it was wonderful. But within the next few hours, even more kind of fun things happened. I started experiencing a lot more issues medically. ICP basically meant that my liver was slowing down. It wasn't working as well as it should do anyway. Then by the time we got to the morning of the next day, my midwives became aware that my kidney function was basically nothing. They'd have to put in a catheter because there was a possibility that I would need surgery. And also with an epidural, a lot of the time, you don't always know to wee because you can't feel as much anymore. So I'd had a catheter put in, but there'd been no urine production whatsoever. My kidneys had basically stopped working. It became very clear with regular tests that another thing that was happening, my blood pressure started getting very, very high because I had developed preeclampsia since being in the hospital, and my temperature was very, very high as well because I had also developed sepsis. So lots and lots of fun things. I had an incredible midwife at this point. I had 2 midwives, one midwife and one student midwife, and they spoke to me afterwards and said it was like looking at a textbook description of what happens to the human body when the body starts to shut down. So my organs were just like, I don't have kind of had about enough of this. So slowly my internal systems were going, we're not going to be doing this anymore. Which was frustrating because by the time I received all of this news as to exactly what was going on, I was 9 centimeters dilated, which basically meant that I was getting ready to be in the game zone for having my birth and doing all of this. But I was told in no uncertain terms that Posy wasn't at risk. It was me that was at risk. If I had waited any longer, and it would have probably been at least another hour or 2 hours before I was in a position to be able to start pushing out a baby, my kidney functionality would have probably been damaged to the point where I would have constantly needed help for my kidneys to work. Slowly my birth plan was kind of falling apart, and I was very, very scared about having to go in for surgery. But the thing that I realised, even though I was kind of high as a kite on various drugs and delirious with lack of sleep, I knew I wouldn't be able to be a good mother to my baby if I pushed myself to the point of being unwell just because I wanted to have the birth plan that I planned for. But yes, I was explained this situation, that we needed to operate and we needed to get Posy out now. And I signed a lot of papers with some very interesting terms and conditions that I had to agree to, as I think a lot of people do in surgery. And I remember just feeling quite calm about the whole thing, and within about 5 minutes I'd been taken down to the operating theatre, straight in. And one of the doctors said, "Great, is this Katie, Catherine," reading out, making sure I was the right person, basically. And are there any kind of more complex circumstances, something like that, asking if there are any complications that they needed to be aware of. And I remember lying there and thinking, no, it's fine, it's all routine. And then the anaesthetist who had my notes was listed off this list of things, these additional complications for my condition. And I suddenly realised, oh, they're talking about me. This is quite serious. This isn't going, they really need to get her out. And so that was quite eye-opening as well, because everyone had talked to me in such a way that I hadn't really grasped how extreme everything had suddenly become. But I mean, C-sections are incredible things. They were talking about the fact that we were going to have to wait, 2-3 more hours before we were going to meet our baby. We were in there, bish bash bosh, she was out in less than 10 minutes. And they lifted her up above the screen so that Emrys could see that she was a girl, because we didn't know. And I wanted him to tell me. And he said, "She's a girl." And I just cried and cried And he cried and cried because I was not expecting her to be a girl. And that moment was incredible. And I could hear her crying straight away, and they weighed her, and then they came and they put her right next to me. And they couldn't put her on my chest because I was all hooked up to all of these various machines, but she was right next to my head, and she started crying, and I spoke to her and she stopped, and it was amazing. As it was, we had this whole playlist of music and lovely things that I was supposed to be listening to while giving birth. And because it was an emergency C-section and they just wheeled me straight in, I ended up listening to the radio, I think it was, and hilariously, I've Had the Time of My Life from Dirty Dancing was playing when they started to operate on me. And I remember thinking, I wouldn't say it's the time of my life. I mean, obviously having a baby was great. I was very happy about the fact that we got a baby out of it, but the whole experience I wouldn't necessarily say was the time of my life. So it was funny. I was thinking, you couldn't write this. This is so bizarre. And yeah, they stitched me all up and they wheeled me out, and that was it. I'd had a baby, and it was all a bit of a shock. All a bit unexpected. And unfortunately, my recovery wasn't great. Posey was actually discharged before I was. My recovery took a little bit longer. So we did have to stay in the hospital for several days after she was born. I think we were there 4 days after she was born before we were allowed to go home. But yes, that's what happened, guys. I did have some PTSD after the surgery, mostly I think because it was all so unexpected. Having a baby is bizarre anyway because you're suddenly handed this child and you have to look after them. It's all very, very intense. But going through something so extreme beforehand kind of didn't help. So I did have quite bad PTSD when I left the hospital. Luckily, that does seem to have alleviated now, and I have a lot of support, and I'm getting some help around my mental health, which is all wonderful. Yeah, but I making a video for this channel couldn't have been further from my mind, at least for the first few months after Posey was born. Because it takes a long time for your body to repair itself from surgery. And, another fun thing that happened was in terms of blood loss. You obviously experienced some during surgery. I had about double the normal amount during surgery. So yeah, that basically meant in terms of my body repairing itself, it was a little bit more difficult just because everything was very tired. And then you're tired anyway because you're looking after a newborn baby. More than anything, I just wanted to be in the moment with my baby. I think having such a different birth from what I expected, I did find it difficult to kind of make my peace with that for a long time. I did think that I would talk about this whole experience a lot sooner on this channel. It's something that I think is important to share, that I still think of it as a positive birth experience. Because of everything that happened, we ended up with a beautiful, healthy baby. I was healthy, I was well looked after. I feel like I made the right decision at every point, and it was my decision to make. I was given enough information in each instance to be able to make the right decision for us as a family and for me as an individual in every single part of our birth. So it may not have been the drug-free water birth that I had envisioned, but it still was the right thing for us to do. Due to the circumstances of that particular birth. And I think it's important to talk about that, but it's taken me a long time to almost grieve the birth that I didn't have, because it is difficult when almost every decision that you wanted to make over something massive to do with your body is kind of taken away from you, and you don't kind of get to make the choices that you really wanted to make. But I do feel proud of the fact that I was able to do it, that Posey was fine, and that here we are almost a year later, and she's awesome. And I may be a little bit of a different shape than I was, but my body, I mean, bodies are incredible. My body sewed itself back together. You want to talk about a finished object? That's incredible. But it's taken me a while. And I'm glad that I finally got it out here. It was complicated, it was hard, it's not easy. I don't think any birth experience is easy. I have friends who had the kind of birth that I envisioned myself having, this perfect birth, and they felt that it wasn't what they'd wanted in the end, even though they'd planned for a water birth and all of this amazing stuff. They felt odd afterwards, as though something wasn't quite right, or it wasn't everything that they'd envisioned it to be. So I think that it's very, very natural, very, very normal to feel like that about birth. But it's an incredible thing. It's a life-changing thing. Having children is a life-changing thing, or at least it has been for me. And that is why it's taken me a while to get back here. One thing that I have learnt from being pregnant, having a baby, becoming a parent, and now raising an incredible little girl is that it is more important than ever to be kind to myself in every way that I can. I don't really get to sleep, and there's very little time for me in the way that there used to be. I think about the hours and hours that I had just for myself before I became a parent, and I think I could have done so much more with that time. But the time that I get now, I try to be as kind to myself as possible, and to allow myself to not necessarily feel guilty about the things that I'm not doing, and just be happy and present and in the moment and enjoy what I'm doing right here and now. And at least for the foreseeable future, that is what I'm going to want to do going forwards. So that is all of the medical stuff to one side. That is all done. Welcome back, anyone who didn't want to listen to all the gory squishiness of childbirth. Hi, how are you doing? It was pretty good stuff. There's some good stuff in there, but no, I totally understand if you didn't want to sit through all of that. It was difficult for all of us who were involved with it too, but yeah, that was the biggest thing. I had a baby, and now here we were with an amazing little girl. But there have also been a lot of other changes that have been going on in my life. The parenthood thing was obviously the biggest one, but I had fully expected after my maternity leave came to an end that I would be returning to my previous job. And due to some unforeseen circumstances that I didn't really have much control over, unfortunately, I wasn't in a position to go back to my previous job. And that made me very, very sad, because I love the girls that I work with. I really enjoyed my job, and without blowing my own horn, I did feel like I was pretty good at it. But I know that my team are incredibly well looked after with the person who is now doing my job, and that makes me very happy, because they are wonderful and they need to bloom and flourish and be wonderful people in their own right. But it did put me in a bit of a jam, because I didn't really know what I was going to do going forwards. And out of the blue, a job kind of landed in my lap that has ended up being incredible. I am now back at work. I started back at work in the summer, and I am a librarian now. Yeah, all of those years of dressing like a librarian have finally paid off. But I work at a library that is very close to our home. My commute is basically nothing in comparison to what it used to be, and I am heading up a team of incredible people who are just wonderful. It's very, very different to anything that I've ever done, and granted, it's not kind of the shiny creative field that I had hoped to be working in for the foreseeable future, but it makes me very, very happy. It is flexible around me being able to essentially be the main carer of Posy still, and it gives me a lot of job satisfaction. And considering the amount of hours that I spent on a train toing and froing from London for such a long time, I think I deserve to be able to have a slightly more relaxed commute and therefore be around for our daughter. So everything has ended up being great on the job front, but obviously that was an additional stress, and I've had to acquire a lot more work skills. I've had to learn a completely new role, which has been fascinating and infuriating all at the same time, but I am very, very happy. I'm still learning. I think that this is a job that I will be learning for the foreseeable future. Only being a part-time worker doesn't help as well when you're trying to learn a whole set of new skills. But my job satisfaction is incredibly high, and the fact that I am able to work more locally and be around for Posy and obviously Rolly as well. Rolly's doing really, really well, by the way, and he is loving his job as a big brother, and he gets to see me more than ever, so everyone's a winner. Big life changes, essentially. Lots and lots of big life changes happening, all of which have filled my mind and my heart and my time. And that's just another reason why I haven't been around for all of you lovely, lovely podcast viewing people. So yeah, new baby, new job. Basically what feels like a new life entirely. I feel like a different person than the person that I was before. But I am still me. I am still a creative individual who needs to have a creative outlet and who loves being a part of this lovely channel and connecting with all of you lovely people. And so I want to talk a little bit now about my plans going forwards. Things are going to be a little bit different. There was no way that they couldn't be, considering all of the different things that are now taking up my time, and my priorities are just completely different now than they ever were a year ago. But I do have plans, because I want to be here, and if you are still wanting to watch me, that would make me very, very happy indeed. Podcast wise and video wise, I used to put a video up every week. That kind of decreased when I was in pregnancy for obvious reasons, but doing a weekly video is just not sustainable for this channel anymore at the moment. I wouldn't feel comfortable taking that time away from my family and my other commitments every week, and it would end up being something that felt difficult to do and something that wouldn't bring me joy anymore. And the last thing that I want is for this channel not to be filled with joy and positivity. So my plans going forward are, from the new year, from January, I will be creating one video each month filled with creative content, be it what I am making, different experiences I've had, maybe places that I've visited, lots of different video footage put together for one video each month in the year of 2020. I want to make sure that I don't push myself too much and that this doesn't become a trial. I want it to be something that I do because I want to do it, because I think that will then create the best possible content for all of you. So from January, I shall be uploading a video once a month, and that's kind of what I'm sticking to. Apologies if you would like more, but the way that I always like to think about things is it's better to leave someone wanting more than to completely oversaturate your particular genre. So here's hoping that that will be a good start, at least going forwards. If you want to have more content from me right now, kind of going forwards, you need an inside number 23 fix right here, right now. There are some places that you can follow me in terms of getting the best content that I'm currently putting out on the internet. First and foremost is Instagram. I know that some of you don't actually want to be on Instagram because you may not want to be on social media at all, but you may not know that you can actually still view my Instagram online without having an account yourself. You just have to go to this little website, which I shall put on the screen for you now, and that will show you my feed online, whether you have an Instagram account or not, because I totally appreciate it's not for everybody. But Instagram is definitely the best place to be kept up to date with everything I'm doing. I share projects on there, more personal bits and pieces, and it's definitely the main social media outlet that I use. I've also created an Instagram for Inside Number 23. Really hasn't been used over the last year because I haven't been posting anything at all, but if you follow me there, inside.number.23, that will be where I share when there are new videos on this channel. I'll probably post on my Instagram stories if there are new videos as well, but there will be permanent posts on that Instagram feed, the inside.number.23 feed, and that will show you when there is a new video up. So I would recommend following that if you just want to be kept up to date as when there are new videos on the channel. Shockingly, I'm actually going to refer you to Ravelry for another way to keep in touch with me and to see what I'm up to, because I have been trying very, very hard to keep my Ravelry up to date with all of the projects that I'm currently working on. Because I'm not going to be uploading as many videos as I used to, I thought it would be a great way for people to just kind of check in and see maybe what I'm doing. So have I cast on a new cardigan, or what yarn am I using, or the specifics of a particular project, how I found it. I'm finding it really fun to kind of update my notes as much as I can, some more than others, I'm not going to lie, but my Ravelry at the moment is very much entirely full of all of the projects that I'm working on. So if you're interested in what I am knitting or crocheting, although there's not much crochet, I'm not gonna lie, check out me on Ravelry. That is Miss Lavelli on Ravelry, which is the same as my Instagram name. I have one more thing to kind of plug in terms of if you want a little bit more Katie content before my videos start being more regular again, and it's a little side project that I'm actually very, very proud of. Emrys and I have started an audio podcast which is called The Curators of Horror. It is a podcast in which we have a guest each episode, and after asking them a series of questions on a questionnaire, we try and find the perfect horror film for them. Basically, we think that horror films are great, and that there is a perfect horror film out there for everyone, even people who kind of say, oh, I don't like horror, I hate horror films. There's definitely a horror film out there for you. And it's been really, really fun doing it so far. It's been great for me because Emrys does everything. It is 100% his baby. He has come up with the idea, with the questionnaire. He contacts different guests for us. I just need to put aside maybe an hour and a half one evening every so often to sit on my own sofa at home and record an audio podcast, so I don't even have to put on makeup or clothes if I didn't want to. And it's been wonderful. It's been a really lovely thing for us to work on collaboratively, for us to work on together, something that is separate from parent duties and such. And it's just been really fun. It's given us a whole different medium to play around with, and I'm just incredibly proud of it, and particularly of Emrys, because it is literally all his work. It is available pretty much everywhere that you can get audio podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Stitcher, we're on the Google podcast platform, which I can't remember the name for because I don't use it, but anywhere that you can basically get a podcast, an audio podcast, you will be able to find it. So please do go and check it out if you have the time. I would say there is a little bit of fruity language. There are some swears in there. This is an adult podcast. It's not something that I'd recommend listening to with your babies, with your children. Unlike this channel, which I endeavour to make as family friendly as possible, although all of the talk of childbirth may not have been appropriate, so obviously viewer discretion advised for that. But it's been really fun and I'm really happy with it. Emrys is really happy with it, so if it sounds like something that you would like to listen to, do give it a little check out. And subscribe on Apple Podcasts and rate and review and all of that stuff, because then we get more promotion and more people can hear it, and it's been, yeah, it's great. As with all of this information, I'll put links down below, so for my Instagram, for my Ravelry, but also for the Curators of Horror podcast website, where you can go on and it basically does everything for you. It shows you where to go to get it and everything. So yeah, enjoy that. Wow guys, this has felt weird, I'm not gonna lie, it feels very, very strange, but thank you all so much for waiting for me, for being so patient and understanding that I haven't had the opportunity to be with you at all over the last year. I'm really looking forward to where this channel will go in the near future. I have big plans. It's all very exciting, and more than anything, I just want to find that perfect balance between all of the things that I love. You know, my home, my family, my creative outlets, and this channel is a part of that. So yeah, I'm hopeful and excited about the future. Yeah, I just love you all. It's felt like a really long time away. I'm happy to be tentatively back with you, and just thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, and hopefully I'll see you all soon. Bye.